Good morning, students. Hope all of you are fine. Beta, in this lecture we will revise chapter 2, and name of this chapter is Kings, Farmers and Town. Like we know that several developments were there in different parts of the subcontinent during the long span of 1500 years following the end of Harappan civilization. And this was also the period when the Rig Veda was also composed by the people, and those people were living along the Indus and its tributaries. And even agricultural settlements emerged in many parts of the subcontinent, including North India, Deccan Plateau, and the parts of Karnataka. And there are the evidences of pastoral population also in the Deccan. And now the new modes of disposal of the dead and the stone structure were also known. These also emerged, and even the dead were buried with a rich range of iron tools and weapons. So perhaps the most visible was the emergence of early states, empires and kingdoms. So historians, they attempt to understand these development by drawing on a range of sources, and those sources were inscription, text, coins and the visual material. So now the first topic is Princip and Piyadasi. So this was when James Princip, an officer in the mint of the East India Company, he deciphered Brahmi and Khartoshi, two scripts used in the earliest inscription and coins. But this person, he just understood these two scripts, and he found that most of these mentioned a king referred to as Piyadasi, meaning pleasant to behold. And even there were a few inscriptions which refer to the king as Ashoka, and one of the most famous rulers known from the Buddhist texts also. As you know that during the reign of Ashoka, so many pilgrims, they visited India. So from their texts also, these evidences are collected. So this gave a new direction to the investigation into early Indian political history. Indian scholars used inscription and text composed in a variety of languages to reconstruct the lineages of major dynasties, that how these dynasties they ruled over this subcontinent. And even the scholars begin to shift their focus to the context of political history and investigating the connections between political changes and economic and social development. And when we talk about the earliest state, so the earliest state, these were divided in the 16 Mahajanpads. The 6th century is often regarded as a major turning point in the early Indian history. Like this time was associated with the early states and cities and the growing use of the iron. And during that time only the coinage system was also developed. Even it also witnessed the growth of the diverse system of thought, including Buddhism and Jainism. Early Buddhist and Jaina texts, there also it is mentioned about the 16 Mahajanpadas, and even the list vary. Like few Mahajanpads were Vaji, Magdha, Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara, Avanti. But these names, these were mentioned frequently in various texts. So these were the most important Mahajanpad. So, and these Mahajanpad, these were ruled by the kings, and they were known as the Gan or Sanghas. And some were that oligarchy also, where power was shared by a number of men, and often collectively they were known as the Rajas. And both Mahavira and the Buddha, they belong to such ganas. And even in the case of Vaji Sangha, the Rajas controlled resources such as land collectively. So although their histories were difficult to reconstruct because we didn't find any sources regarding that, but some of these states lasted for nearly 1,000 years. Each Mahajanpad had a capital city, and that capital city was fortified. Means various type of construction was made over there, and maintaining these fortified cities as well as providing for armies and bureaucracies required resources. And even Brahman began composing Sanskrit texts known as the Dharam Sutra. These laid down norms for rulers who were ideally expected to be Kshatriyas. Rulers were advised to collect taxes and tribute from the cultivators, traders, and the artisans. As you know, during that time, the main source of income for any kingdom was these taxes only. And even as you know, at that time, the raids on the neighboring states was recognized as a major source of acquiring wealth. So some states acquired standing armies and maintained regular bureaucracies, and others continued to depend on militia recruited. What do we mean by militia? Beta, when the people, they form their army, it is known as the militia. So this way now now the kingdom were established, and even the armies were also set up for the protection of such kingdoms. Now the other topic is the Magdha. Magdha became the most powerful Mahajanpad, and at present this Magdha is known as Bihar. And modern historians explain this development in a variety of ways. Magdha was a region where agriculture was especially productive. And even other minerals were also found here, like the iron mines were accessible. Present day जो झारखंड में है, and as you know, earlier Jharkhand was also part of Bihar. So this area is highly rich in the minerals, iron ores, and even and that iron ore was used to make weapons and tools. And even elephants, an important component of the army, were found in the forest in the region. And even the Ganga and its tributaries provided a means of cheap and convenient communication also. Early Buddhist and Jain writer who wrote about Magad attributed its power to the policies of individuals like Bimbisara, Ajat-Shattu, and Mahapadam Nanda. They are the best known, and their ministers who helped implement their policies. And initially Rajgaha beta, it means it was the capital of Magda, and Rajgaha का जो meaning होता है, that is the house of the king. And Rajgaha was a fortified settlement, की means वहाँ पर आपको forts मिलेंगे. It was located amongst the hills, and the capital was shifted to Patliputra, and Patliputra at present it is known as the Patna. So now that other topic that is given, it is an early empire. As we know, the growth of Magad, it was the emergence of the Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, who founded the empire, extended control as the far northwest as Afghanistan and Baluchistan, and his grandson Ashoka, the most famous ruler of early India, conquered Kalinga, present day coastal Odisha. That area was known as Kalinga. Now, what do we know about these Mauryas? Now, historians, they have used a variety of sources to reconstruct the history of Mauryan Empire. These include archaeological finds, especially sculpture. And even also valuable are the contemporary works such as the account of Megasthenes. He was a Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, which survives in fragments. Another source that is often used is the Arthashastra, parts of which were probably composed by Kautilya or Chanakya, traditionally believed to be the minister of Chandragupta. बेटा जो हम अर्थशास्त्र आज का हम इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ते हैं, that is known to be the part of that Arthashastra that was composed by Kautilya. The Mauryas are mentioned in later Buddhist, Jain and Puranic literature, as well as in Sanskrit literary works also. The inscription of Ashoka were found on rocks and pillars are often regarded amongst the most valuable sources. Ashoka was the first ruler who inscribed his messages to his subjects and officials on stone surfaces. And do you know these stone surfaces? These provide a very important literary base for the historian also. He used the inscriptions to proclaim what he understood to be Dhamma. This included respect towards elders, generosity towards Brahmins, and those who renounced worldly life, treating slaves and servants kindly, and respect for religions and traditions other than one's own. With all these combinedly, these are known as the Ashoka's Dham. Now, how the empire was administered. So there were 5 major political centers in the empire: the capital Patliputra and the provincial center of Takshila, Ujjaini, Toshali and Suvarnagari, all mentioned in Ashokan inscription. And if we examine this inscription, we found the same message engraved everywhere. The regions included within the empire were just too diverse. It is likely that administrative control was strongest in area around the capital and the provincial center. These centers were carefully chosen, both Takshila and Ujjaini, being situated on important long distance trade routes, while Suvarnagiri, literally which means the golden mountain, was possibly important for tapping the gold mines of Karnataka. That is why the name is given the Suvarnagiri. And even communication along both land and riverine routes was vital for the existence of the empire. Like journeys from the center to the provinces could have taken weeks, if not months. This means the arranging for provision as well as protection for those who were on the move. And army was an important means for ensuring the latter. Megasthenes mentioned a committee with 6 subcommittees for coordinating military activity. One looked after the navy, the second managed transport and provision, the third was responsible for foot soldiers, the fourth for horses, and the fifth for chariots, and the sixth for elephants. So this way there were the 6 committees. The activities of the second subcommittee were rather varied, arranging for bullock carts to carry equipment, procuring food for soldiers and fodder for animals, and recruiting servants and artisans to look after the soldiers. So this way all the needs were fulfilled. Ashoka also tried to hold his empire together by propagating Dhamma, the principle of which, as we have seen, was simple and universally applicable. According to him, he ensured the well-being of people in this world, and even special officers known as the Dham Mahamata were appointed to spread the message of Dhamma. जो धमा में बेटा 6 चीज़ों को एक्सप्लेन किया गया है, so that message was given by these Mahamata. Now the question is, how important was the empire? When historians they begin reconstructing early Indian history, the emergence of the Mauryan Empire was regarded as a major landmark. Like India was then under colonial rule and was part of the British Empire. 19th and early 20th century Indian historians found that there was an empire in early India. So some of the archaeological finds associated with the Mauryas, including stone sculpture, and these stone sculpture, these were considered to be the example of the spectacular art. Many of these historians found the message of Ashokan inscription very different from that of most other rulers, suggesting that Ashoka was more powerful and industrious, and even he was humble also towards the other rulers. So it is not surprising that nationalist leader in the 20th century regarded him as an inspiring figure. So, why we call this Mauryan Empire very important? Because it lasted for about 150 years, which is not a very long time. So even within the frontiers of the empire, control was not uniform. By the 2nd century, new chiefdoms and kingdoms emerged in several parts of the subcontinent. Right? So beta, this was the topic for today. Other topic we will revise tomorrow. Hope all of you have understood the topic. Thank you and have a nice day.